Good evening. Thank you for joining our live webinar. Topic Family Law Live Q&A with myself, Advocate Mohammed Abduroaf. Today, the topic or the questions that were posed deals with relocation and passport consent. So basically, relocation, if you are relocating and you are an adult, there's no need to get consent from anyone else, maybe your spouse, if you want to keep the relationship happy. But nonetheless, we're dealing with consent issues where a minor child is concerned. A child younger than 18 years old, from 0 to 17 years old. Once a child turns 18 years old, the child is no longer a minor, the child is an adult. And that specific child does not require anyone's consent to relocate or to leave the home, to travel, and so on, because the person is an adult. But nonetheless, we're dealing with the relocation and passport consent for minor children, and especially in the case whereby the parties cannot come to an agreement regarding those specific aspects. So, to put you in the loop in terms of South African law, in terms of the Children's Act, when it comes to issue concerning the minor child leaving the Republic of South Africa or applying for a passport, both guardians' consent is required. So, a guardian is someone who has parental rights and responsibilities of guardianship, and that basically deals with the legal aspects of a child's life. It has nothing to do with care and contact, the visitation, the physical aspect. Therefore, I always mention on our webinars to put you give you a bit of a background. A person can have guardianship rights, legal rights over a child, but that person may not be allowed to have any contact rights to see the child. That's possible. Let's say the child does not like the specific parent and the child is 17 years old and there's some issues over there. The court might say, you know what, I think for the sake of the child, her mental well-being, and for her to complete schooling, maybe parent, you cannot have contact with this child. It's possible. However, when it comes to the child going to a certain school, applying for a passport, relocating, entering into legal contracts, etc., your consent would be required. That's where the guardian's consent comes in. Nonetheless, I see a question is on the Facebook. That's wonderful. I will deal with that shortly. There are a few ways to connect with us. Obviously, the simplest way would be going to Facebook Live and to the Advocate Mohammed Abduroaf Facebook page. We have now included the WhatsApp is on the screen now. You can leave a voice note and explain your legal situation, your legal problem, and it will be played at our next live webinar. Please do not mention your name unless you want to, but we prefer you not to mention your name. It limits or it assists us in not verifying from you whether or not you want your name to be mentioned or not. And leave a voice note, send it to our WhatsApp number. It's also our office number, but it is a WhatsApp number as well, and we will deal with that as well. Okay, nonetheless, another way is going via the Zoom, whereby you can pose a question. You can see on the screen below. You can register a question and you can join via Zoom, not your video, but your voice, and we can discuss. We obviously, for all these specific technology, you need a good internet connection. Otherwise, you can send a normal email by registering your question, and when you have time, you can watch the video. But anyway, nonetheless, we have a few questions, and I'll deal with the question live shortly. So the first question that was posed, it is the following. 2 years ago, my wife and I decided to adopt a child. That's very good. All the legalities were finalized, and our daughter has our surname. Wonderful. We are in the process of divorcing, and I would like to know what happens to the child. Okay, that's a bit sad, but it happens, and that's what I do for a living, dealing with divorce issues. I do not marry people. And if they come to my office and they try counseling, they try everything, and that's what I'm here to assist you in trying to resolve the divorce as speedily and as amicably as possible, and if that is the last resort. But nonetheless, I digress. It's gone. My wife wants to move back to the USA. Is it possible for her to stay in South Africa, or must she move with the mother after the divorce? Okay, so the question basically is, they adopted a child, the parties are in the process of divorce, the mother seems to be a USA citizen, And it seems to me that the mother is a primary caregiver. I'm guessing that. And the question basically is, the child is adopted. Should the child go with the mother to the USA, or can the child stay in South Africa and be cared for by the father? Okay, well, how do I unpack this? Okay, let's deal with the divorce aspects. Let's deal with adoption aspect. The moment parents or people adopt a child, that specific child becomes the child from a legal point of view for all intents and purposes of the adopting parents. It's very important to understand that. The adopting parents have a legal obligation to maintain the child, to care for the child, to feed the child, etc. That child can take the adoptive parents, to the maintenance court. That is possible. So that is your child, you adopted the child can have your surname and everything, for lack of a better way of putting it. Even if whatever happens, that child is as if that child was born from the mother, full stop, and from the father. That is how it is. Now we're dealing with the issue concerning the divorce, okay? When it comes to divorce, all that you stipulate in the divorce documentation stipulate that the child has been adopted, but the consequences of the divorce is exactly the same as if the child was born from the mom and the dad, like the biological child. There's no difference. You might just mention that the child was adopted in the divorce documentation. The custody battles can still take place, maintenance battles, etc., as a child born from the parties. Now, the question is, should the minor child remain in South Africa, or may the minor child remain in South Africa, or should the minor child go with the other parent? So that question is not necessarily applicable because the child was adopted or not. The question is, what would be in the minor child's best interest? If it is in the specific minor child's best interest to relocate back to the USA with the minor child, then that be it. That would be the best for the minor child, to go with the mother if she was a minor child's primary caregiver, if the mother cared for the child while, etc. We do not know the age of the child. That's not mentioned. But that can also play an important role in my answer. If the child is, for argument's sake, let's say, this is very important, let's say the child is maybe 15 years old. The child has her roots here in South Africa. Her biological parents also live here. Alternatively, she might have brothers and sisters living here. She might have a bit of a grounding in South Africa, which most will be the case. And the question would still be posed, would it make sense for this minor child to relocate with a mother to the USA, to a foreign country, and be cut from her previous life, and also from her father, adoptive father, and also to continue school that side, whereby she's now 15 years old or 16 years old in South Africa. So those are all important aspects. But at the same time, has the adoptive father the skills and the capabilities to care for the minor child? Because if he does not have that, then automatically, I would say, despite all else, it would make sense for the minor child to remain with the mother and to relocate. So we have to look at this matter holistically, at all factors, look at everything, and based upon that, determine whether or not it would be in the minor child's best interest to relocate with the father or the mother or not. So we have to look at this matter. Okay, sorry about that. My apologies. I hope that answers that specific question. Let us move to the second question. And after the third question, I shall deal with the Facebook Live question posted on the Advocate Mohammed Abduroaf Facebook page. If there are any other questions, feel free to pose it and I shall deal with that. I only see one for now. Just doing some housekeeping. It's easy to miss something. Okay, the second question. I want to relocate to New Zealand with my 17-year-old child. Okay, the moment I say 17 years old, I think, when is the child turning 18 years old? Because once the child turns 18 years old, this whole discussion falls away. The father says he will only agree to it if I agree to pay for the air ticket for him to visit once a year. Is that fair? What can I do if I do not want to agree to that? Okay, here we're dealing with the issue concerning relocation again. However, the child is 17 years old. The child might have turned 17. The child might be turning 18 next week. I do not know. But the father is, in principle, okay with it. However, he says pay for my ticket to visit New Zealand to see the child, otherwise I will not give consent. Okay, so what happens now? If the father does not give consent, I think that is where we're going towards. If he does not give consent, then unfortunately the mother would have to approach the court, and the court would have to make a decision as to whether or not consent of the father should be dispensed with. So that's the long and the short of the matter. The court would obviously make a decision whether or not it would be in the minor child's best interest to relocate with the mother to New Zealand. The child might be in grade 10, 11, 12, I do not know. But if I look at the facts, it does not seem like the father has much reason to oppose the relocation other than wanting to see the child. There's Zoom, there's FaceTime, there's WhatsApp, and all those specific social media platforms to cause contact with the place. But the question is, the mother must first be able to prove that it would be in a minor child's best interest to relocate with her, as opposed to remaining in South Africa. Of course, she might want to relocate because of a better job, better life financially. We have COVID-19. We have all these challenges we have now, so that might be a good reason. Better schooling for the minor child, affordability, and so on. Can the father care for the minor child in South Africa? Is that an option? Now we tell the mother, now the court tells the mother, why we must remain in South Africa, we're blocking you. But now she must suffer. Or the court says, okay, the court cannot tell the mother that she must remain in South Africa. She's an adult, she can do what she wants to. Or the court might stipulate, mother, you can go to New Zealand, but the child stays here. Who looks after the child? Does the father look after the child? Can he look after the child? Is it a place for him to look after the child? Can he afford to look after the child? And so on. A host of variables and factors that have to be considered. My general answer to these type of issues are, if you are the father, I represent fathers as well, if you are the mother, perfect. Both of you have to put forward to the court what you believe is in the minor child's best interest. Why you want the minor child to stay, dad, because he's my client, or why you want the minor child to relocate, mom, because she's my client. You need to explain, you need to look at the pros and cons. If the child does relocate, well, what are the schools? What schools are there? What opportunities are there for the minor child after school? Must she come back to South Africa? Medical facilities, etc. Very important to note. Family that side, is the extended, are the extended families that side? The child's like in Cape Town or in Johannesburg, KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, wherever it is, all those factors have to be considered in determining whether or not it will be in the minor child's best interest to relocate with the primary caregiver or the caregiver, or would it be in the minor child's best interest to remain in South Africa? That was question number 2. The third question, we can look at the screen. I will deal with that immediately. I shall deal with that. I am currently living in Canada with my child on a work visa. I plan on moving back to South Africa with my child in February 2020, 2 years after COVID-19. The father is going to remain in the UK for another year, most probably to work on. Do I need his consent to travel back to the UK? Should we visit? We are South African citizens. Okay, the long and the short of the matter is, once you come back to South Africa in our year, border control, everybody will ask you, ma'am, do you have the consent to visit another country? Because in terms of the Children's Act, Section 18.5, both parents' consent is required, both guardians' consent is required for the minor child to leave the Republic of South Africa. So you would obviously require the father's consent again. So unfortunately, the father would have to email you or something to show the Department of Home Affairs that you are giving the consent to allow the minor child to travel out of the Republic of South Africa once the child is back in South Africa. I hope that answered that specific question. Thank you very much for that. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to ask. Okay, here we have a question on Facebook Live. Let me just type that in. Okay, and that's the question. Let me underline it to make it look decent. And the question from Facebook Live is, how do I enforce divorce agreement X move to Canada? Okay, so a divorce agreement, I don't have that much facts over here, but I'll answer all the potential. So divorce agreement, you could have maybe care and contact in a divorce agreement. We could have financial aspects in a divorce agreement. Let's say, for example, he has to pay you part of the accrual. He has to pay you the proceeds of the house, his pension. I do not know. He has assisted with the sale of the car, the division of joint estate, etc. There could be the other aspects, child maintenance. I presume you're dealing with that, or care and contact, visitation of the minor child, and so on. So I would presume we're dealing here with issue concerning child maintenance. If there is a maintenance agreement in place and the other party, sorry, a maintenance agreement that was made in order of court in South Africa, and the other party now lives in a different country like Canada. Obviously, South Africa does not have the authority to enforce its orders in various other countries because we only have power here. Our judges and our courts and our police and our government does not have authority in a different country. That doesn't make sense. The same way you can't expect another country, all the countries in the rest of the world, to have authority in our country, tell us what to do. No, we are autonomous, we're sovereign. That's how it works. However, in terms of the Reciprocal Enforcement of Maintenance Orders Act, in terms of that act, South Africa has agreements with various other countries, whereby those agreements stipulates or deals with a scenario whereby there's a maintenance order in one country and we would like to have it enforced in another country. So that is possible. So if you'd like to enforce this agreement and it is a maintenance agreement, you should determine whether or not South Africa and Canada has that specific reciprocal agreement. I do not know. You just Google it, type in the Reciprocal Enforcement of Maintenance Orders Act. You'll find a whole list of countries with whom South Africa has those specific agreements. It's on the government website, Department of Justice, and you'll find it very easy. And you'll know. And if there is such an agreement, and then obviously by diplomatic channels, you can have it enforced. So that's it. Care and contact, obviously that will be very difficult. I mean, if the ex moved to Canada, how do you force contact? Unless the order specifically maybe dealt with that scenario. But I doubt it would have dealt with that. And property aspects, simple. You go to a sheriff of the court and you execute it. If the person owes you money and the person overseas, it can be very, very complicated. But that's something else which is not within the realm of family law. The person's coming to us, they do have an agreement. It's wonderful. So South Africa has an agreement with Canada. I presume so. We have an agreement with many modernized countries. Some countries we do not have agreements with. And yes, follow the Remo Act and hopefully you can get it. I was lucky in my years of practice to have dealt with both scenarios whereby the applicant was in Cape Town and we applied for maintenance in a different country, and whereby the second scenario whereby the respondent, in this case the father, was in South Africa, Cape Town, and the mother was in a different country, the United States. So that was good. So I had an opportunity to see both. It's a bit slow, but tedious because the process takes place via diplomatic channels, via the maintenance courts or via the ministers and the government. So it's not done via simply. The maintenance court in Cape Town does not contact the maintenance court that side. We have to follow our diplomatic channels via our government and so on. Nonetheless, thank you very much for your time. Oh, and I see another question came in, and I have an obligation, a moral and a legal, not a legal obligation, but I have an obligation to deal with that. Let me deal with that quickly. We are online again tomorrow. So if you want to pose a question, you're welcome to do that. So let's make this look pretty. Question 1. And then let's put this one over there. And copy and paste it. Question 2. Okay, that looks better. So if you want to add on additional questions, you're welcome to just say in the Advocate Muhammad Abduroaf Facebook page, question 1 on the Facebook, and I shall deal with that. Let me see, and things are looking good. Okay, great. Question number 2 from the Facebook Live. Father has immigrated to USA. He makes an effort for 2 phone calls a month. I have no idea why, as he has access to video calls and so on, etc. He does not pay maintenance as per the court order. Would it be wise to rather revoke rights and responsibilities via the court, as he now seems to be using this for control now, making it difficult every time travel consent is needed? He is not using his contact as ordered. Okay. So this is where how I deal with these matters. I unfortunately, and I have a big problem with this, and with the law and so on. The law does not. I'm certain it can, but the law does not force fathers to want to be involved in the children's lives. It's very unfortunate. The law will come in and step in if the mother or the caregiver of the child refuses the other party access, contact, and it's a criminal offense. But if a father, unfortunately, is not involved, or the mother, depending upon who the primary caregiver is and the circumstances, does not want to be involved in the child's life, unfortunately, the law doesn't come in and say, Dad, the court order says that you are entitled to have contact with a minor child for half the school holidays. But the father says, I'm not interested. I want to only see the child once or twice during school holidays. There is no criminal sanction against that specific father or mother, depending upon who is exercising contact. However, if the court order says, Dad, you should allow the mother contact for half the school holidays, but the father says, no, I'm not giving the mother contact. I'm only giving contact for 5 days of the school holidays, of the December school holidays, the father will be committing a criminal offense because in violation of the order. I believe we should go both ways, and we should have some creativity, some creative ways of dealing with that scenario. So the specific questioner on Facebook, question number 2, I would say, if you are having problems when it comes to issue concerning consent, because the father is now in the USA, under those circumstances, it might make sense to approach the court and advise the court, these are the problems I have. The father only sees the children telephonically, communicates with them telephonically twice a month. He doesn't make use of video contact. And he's not much involved in the children's lives. I'm the one dealing with the kids here. I'm rearing them. I'm making them big. I'm good. Parenting them, for lack of a better term. And the father's not much involved in the child's life, in the children's lives. But however, when it comes to decisions, guardianship decisions, consent issues, I always have to communicate to the father. It always makes it difficult for us, like traveling and so on. It would be best if the father's consent when it comes to traveling and maybe for the enrollment of schools and so on, that his consent is not required for those specific aspects. Now, if that is your argument and that is your angle of attack, then that might be, a good. And if I was a court and if I was your advocate, maybe I would actually, pursue such a line of argument to stipulate every time when we have to go traveling, it's anxiety. We have to whether or not the father will give consent or not. But he's not even involved in the children's lives. He speaks to the kids 24 times a year telephonically, twice a month telephonically. But when it comes to us living our lives, there's always hindering that. So that might be a good argument. So maybe not revoking all his rights, keep the contact rights available for him should he want to have contact, but limit his guardianship rights because he is becoming problematic. So I hope that answers your specific question. And the person, yes, okay, wonderful. This question number 2 says, yes, that's it exactly. And thank you. Okay, you are welcome for that. And also question number 1 from Facebook says, thank you, are welcome for that. Okay, I see no other questions coming in. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be online again tomorrow morning, and we're doing another webinar tomorrow evening. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I hope to see you online again soon.